a new Hollywood is birthing. And I read an article that by 2027, production in Atlanta will have overtaken production in Los Angeles.
Hi, and welcome to the Storia podcast where storytellers disrupt. I'm David Noronha.
And I'm Fabiano Altamura.
Before we dive into the kickoff episode officially of season 2 of the Storia podcast, please remember to like, subscribe, follow, and give us that 5-star review. Brother.
Yo.
You went somewhere recently. Mm-hmm. Actually, before we kick into season 2, what are you most excited about for season 2 of the Storia podcast?
Not looking like my double chin is coming into shot, and then the long straddly hair that made me look like a 60-year-old.
Okay, so we got 2 comments most commonly. Number 1, that they thought I was doing the podcast with Winston Churchill, or
the cigar.
That Beethoven had been resurrected and he was back.
Yeah, I think it made me look like some kind of eccentric genius. But looking back at all the footage, dude, like it is
Well, you're looking fresh, clean, and healthy, sir.
I feel fresh, clean, and healthy.
Well, I know that beyond his dapper looks that are only getting better. It's glory to glory with Fab.
Your wife did tell me last night I look 10 years younger.
Okay.
And then I added on that she said, you look 10 years younger than David.
Do you know how inappropriate it sounds that you started that by saying your wife told me last night?
At the...
All right.
Okay.
What he meant was
at the apprenticeships
for BETHEL Conservatory of the Arts, to be very clear.
Yeah.
All right. Listen, you recently went somewhere, and I think this is a great topic, which you selected and you tossed out to kick off season 2 of the podcast, because in a way, it's about a new season in Hollywood. Today's topic is the new Hollywood. Brother, where did you go recently that you just saw something mind-blowing?
Yeah. So in August, Claire and I went to a deliverance retreat in Atlanta, which was another topic for another day, which was phenomenal. But I went to see a friend of mine, Mark Fincannon, who is Emmy Award-winning casting director, loves Jesus, casts like Outer Banks. So he took me around Trilith, but I'd been there. Trilith Studios is the biggest studios in North America.
Crazy.
Right now. And I went there probably 4 or 5 years ago when my daughter had a gig there.
Yeah.
And it was really small at the time.
Huh.
And now...
Wasn't it called like Pinewood?
It was called Pinewood. So I think it was... I don't know the history, but I think it may have been owned by Pinewood in London that owned Pinewood there. And now it's called Trilith. The thing is, the interesting thing about that is... I don't know how many years ago, but I think it was 8 to 10 years ago. Dan Cathay, who owns Chick-fil-A, and Mark Fincannon were walking around that area and praying around it.
Huh.
And then it became Pinewood Studios. Now it's all owned by believers. So Dan Cathay owns all of those studios. And the thing is, when we were there, I was walking around it. And you know what it's like in LA. You walk around and you feel a little bit like this. The atmosphere feels very, very interesting.
It's intense. Right? It can be intense.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah.
Walking around there, the restaurants, the houses, the beauty of the studios, the Lord said, this is Solomon's temple.
Wow.
Just the attention to detail is so amazing. And I remember years ago, I was like, Lord, I really want to influence and take over Hollywood. And he said, why take over a mountain that's soiled? Why not create a new one?
Yeah.
And this feels like a new Hollywood is birthing. And I read an article that by 2027, production in Atlanta will have overtaken production in Los Angeles.
Yeah, this is a bigger topic, isn't it? Because California just historically has not been incredibly friendly from a tax perspective, from a liability standpoint for business in general.
Yeah.
It's got the weather. It's got amazing locations. California is a beautiful state. I love it. But man, it is tough to do business in Los Angeles. But the South, I've worked in Atlanta. I shot a show for Marvel Studios called Gifted. My 15-year-old was so cute. 15-year-old. We call him Puppy Paws because he's like 6 feet tall. I don't know where that came out of because I'm like 5'8" on a good day. I have no idea. But he says to me, Papa, do you know that you're part of the MCU? And I said, I've never thought about the fact I basically play this kind of villainous kind of politician in this series called The Gifted. Anyway, I was in Atlanta for that. I don't think Trilith was at, or what, it was what it was. And I was filming a lot on location, so I wasn't there. I've shot in North Carolina. I have to say, in general, the South just seems more family friendly, more pro-business. Honestly, it's the same thing that the issue that Disney had in building Disneyland is he said, I'll never build here again. That's why he went to Florida, and he has such massive amounts of land.
Yeah.
In researching for this particular episode, I was looking at how many more studios they're going to build. I mean, we're talking millions and millions of square feet of sound stages.
Oh, it's massive, dude. I mean, you literally drive around, and I don't know how many. I think there might be 30 sound stages.
There's
right now.
Currently 24. They're building another 8 up to 32 sound stages. Trilith is the pinnacle. It is the most beautiful studio in Georgia.
It is beautiful. I mean, it's the biggest now in North America, and Passion City Church is moving in there. They have a campus there. I mean, you and I were talking about buying a place there. We still want to buy a place.
We do.
There, but
Well, talk to them, because here's what's fascinating to me is they're doing it in a new way. This isn't just a new location. They're doing it in another way. I think I mentioned to you a long time ago, the Lord said to me that actually he had handed the blueprint of Hollywood to the Jewish people when they first founded the Hollywood.
Yeah.
For whatever reasons, not getting into politics and other things, obviously it's a different landscape. It makes me wonder, with Dan Cathay being a believer, owner of Chick-fil-A, I wonder if there's a new spirit that's at the foundation of this new Hollywood.
I mean,
Atlanta.
it's tangible, and their mission is so. And having Mark Fincannon there is a very key person. He is passionate about Jesus.
Wow,
unbelievable
and unapologetic.
Passionate. And we're walking down the street. You'll see a worship leader walking down the street. This Italian guy who's an actor, invited us into his house, loves Jesus. And it feels like a community, and the housing element there is.
We'll talk about that, because right now we're talking about the sound stages, but describe what they're building around.
There's like an entire subdivision in there, like from houses from say 400 to 4 million, and they're all different, so it doesn't feel cookie cutter. At all. All individually unique houses, all beautifully designed, stunningly designed, surrounded by a ton of greenery. There's fitness
lakes,
gym,
family
friendly. There's also restaurants, coffee shops, everything. I mean,
everything you would ever need in walking distance, right?
You wouldn't need to go anywhere, and it's all around a healthy lifestyle.
So this is the thing.
Amazing.
This is the thing that fascinates me. So in just doing some quick research for this particular episode, there's 5,000 currently, and it's only growing. There's 5,000 units, housing units, just within the Trilith area.
Yeah.
What they're describing it now is as sustainable living for the artist. I mean, what some people may or may not understand about Hollywood is when you're on a show or you're on a film, you're talking about working 5 or 6 days per week at a minimum of 10 hours, not uncommonly 12 or 14 hours.
Yeah.
So when I was shooting FBI International, I asked some of the series regulars, we were in Hungary, and I asked some of the series regulars, hey, have you seen this museum? Have you traveled anywhere? They're like, no. 5 days a week. And the calls, your first call on Monday is usually the earliest call, 4 or 5 a.m. if you're the lead of the show. This guy's in every scene.
Yeah.
By the time he gets to Friday, he's being called to set at noon and not wrapping till 2 or 3 in the morning on Saturday. You're trashed. You fall asleep. You kind of get up and do something on a Sunday, and then you hit it again on Monday. It sounds like the creators of Trilith and of this area now are envisioning another life for the artist. What have you heard about that?
I don't know too much about that, to be completely honest.
Yeah. I mean, walking through there, what do you imagine life for the working film actor or?
Well, it's contained for one.
Yeah.
Right? So it's contained. So LA is just one massive sprawl.
Yep.
And you can't afford anything in LA.
No.
If you buy outside of the studios, you can still buy houses for like $450,000, $500,000.
You can't find a house for a family in LA for that much right now.
Find anything. No. You can't even find. I was looking at a condo a couple of years back in Burbank to potentially buy, still $650,000.
So now imagine you're the DP, right? The director of photography or whatever. You wrap at midnight. You've now got to travel to Ventura County or something because you want your kids in a school and you need a house and a backyard and a dog. So now you're traveling for an hour. If you're traveling in traffic, you're commuting for 2 hours each way on top of that. It's brutal, man. It breaks up families, marriages.
It totally does. And if you can live like a 5-minute walk from the studio, or you can live in Fayetteville outside of the studios, I mean, like, it's a game changer. And this, what I say to my students all the time is this, I did really encourage LA in the first few years because it was
the epicenter.
LA. It's the epicenter, but markets change and markets shift. And if you don't, same with stocks, Tesla could be up one day, down the next. It's like real estate with our portfolio. It's worth X one year, the next year it could be down. And it's the same with any kind of market. And now I encourage people to move to Atlanta. Why? Because if you're a believer, thousands of churches.
Why? Well, yeah. So talk to me a little bit about, you described the spiritual sense, atmosphere when you're there. There are churches there. Why else am I a young believing artist? Like, you're a mom, you're a dad. Your kid graduates from BETHEL Conservatory of the Arts or somewhere.
Well, it's cheaper for rent for one, right? I think the fact that People Store is the biggest agent in Atlanta, but they're still boutique compared to LA.
A UTA or something.
Right, of course. Absolutely. But my thing is, you have to get in before the top 5 or the top 10 move in, because once they do, it's game over. It's no longer an emerging market. It's an established market at that point because they've seen it. But they haven't done that yet.
No.
LA might take you, 3 years to establish yourself? Atlanta, we've had students in Atlanta that have got 4 or 5 IMDb credits in their first year with a small agent.
That's crazy. Because I went to a good school, as you did, got repped. I went to LA maybe 1 or 2 years after I graduated. You hit the nail on the head. It took me, and this is not true of everybody, but it took me 3 years with an agent and a manager to book my first guest spot. Why? Because at the time, there were dozens and dozens, if not more, of casting directors. Well, they don't know who I am.
Right.
You graduate without a reel. So you got to do the rounds. These are just look-sees, right? You're just going and you're meeting and you're meeting and you're meeting and you're reading and you're not even right for the role. There is something to be said. They've even done studies about being the big fish in smaller ponds on the university level, about mental health, about success rates, about self-perception of actually getting momentum. I'll tell you, man, not booking, going to school for 4 years and then not booking for 3 years, you start to wonder if you made a mistake. So the idea of booking immediately can be super encouraging.
It can be encouraging. I think you have to treat it as a business. You have to treat yourself as a business.
Unpack that. What do you mean by that?
Well, you're a product. I don't mean to be clinical in that, but you are your product. Your instrument is your product. Right. And I think you have to look at an emerging market and go, well, okay, I want to move to LA because it's the place to be, but it's no longer the epicenter. It isn't anymore. But I don't want to move to the South but I'm like, think about it just from a point of view of cash flow. It's cheaper to rent. There are tons of believers down there. The atmosphere does in no way feel soiled like LA, and you're going to start booking. Then eventually, if you need to, you can move to LA. But if what they're saying is true by 2027, you'll have no need to move to LA.
Listen, my manager now lives in Oregon. I'm in Northern California. I'm in Redding. I can't remember the last time. I think it was CSI Vegas, ironically, that actually did some studio shoots in a soundstage in California. So you wouldn't even have known that I was in California. It just happens to be probably where one of the leads or the head writers are situated or whatever. Instead, I've worked in Toronto. I've worked in Hungary. I've worked in Canada, I think in multiple different areas of that. I've worked in North Carolina because there are studios in North Carolina as well. They do a lot of shooting there as well. TV has changed. Back in the day, you needed to have those. California, first of all, was what they were promoting. I mean, that's the thing that people from around the world imagined coming to.
And Hollywood is Hollywood.
Santa Monica and so on and so forth. But now they're starting to tell these niche stories that are happening all around the world. And so, honestly, a lot of the times you're out on location, unless you're doing a sitcom.
And also, LA is really tailored to the big Hollywood studio movies. Right. But now if all the Marvel are filming at Trilith, it's kind of become decentralized,
It's been, I think that's a great word to lean into. The the market, the entire business has been decentralized. Once Canada, and this started happening at the beginning of my career 20 years ago, Canada had a 30% tax credit. That's the other incentive that Georgia has, is they give like a 20% tax credit and a lot of other benefits.
I think it's even more than that.
Yeah. And so the tax benefits incentivized. At that time, they said, oh, as soon as that fund taps out, it'll all move back to Hollywood. I think it broke open opportunities for storytellers. But here's the other thing that I think is worth leaning into, that a lot of young artists may or may not realize until a year or two into things. The reason why the financial sustainability is so important is because your financial position as you seek work, it will determine what you say yes to and what you say no to. I said yes to many things in LA that I didn't want to do, that either weren't great quality or dealt with things that I just didn't necessarily want to represent. I did it because I felt like I had to financially in order to provide for my family.
Of course.
So if you have the flexibility to keep your cost low and live in a faith-friendly, family-friendly area where you actually sleep at night next to your spouse or your kids, that's a game changer for the artist.
It is. And not only that, it doesn't mean the quality is any less.
Oh, no. The stuff that's coming out of there is...
Yeah, the quality's no less. And listen, all right, for your leads and stuff, they're probably going to book out of LA. Right. But the point is, when you're starting, if you're established, move wherever you want.
Sure.
But when you're not established, I think the main thing is, how am I building up my IMDb credits? How am I building up my resume, my reel, all that kind of stuff? And I really am a big proponent that I think Atlanta is a place to be right now.
I would agree. I think you and I have been having that conversation for a while. And when it comes to auditioning too, I know that it's changed a couple of years past COVID or a year past COVID, but I mean, I've auditioned for pilots literally in my bedroom on, my iPhone or my iPad. I've met with, showrunners and casting directors, and even read opposite leads. It's not the best situation. No. It's always better to be in the room if you can be, but that's exciting, man. Where do you envision, having visited Trilith, having gotten a sense on the land here as we wrap up, where do you see us going in the next 5 to 10 years? Where do you think this thing that we used to call Hollywood what do you think it's actually going to look like?
I think it's going to move over to Atlanta. I actually think that, I think independent movies are going to emerge way more because it's less risk, right? Financially. But I think there's going to be a huge migration. If Hollywood doesn't change, if California doesn't change from a tax credit point of view, I think they're going to lose a lot of production there. And I think it's already going there because, you say it's 20, I think it's 26%. It might be higher now, but that's already a hedge that you get back from the government that kind of secures your investors.
Huge.
You know what I mean? Like on a $10 million movie, that's 2.6 million.
It's a lot of money.
Then I think you get a +2 or something like that for hiring locally. I know that's the case when we're doing Unplanned in Oklahoma, but I think it's going to migrate over there. And I think that we personally, you and I will be, I know we have projects that we want to film there anyway, but I'm saying I think we need to open a school there.
That would be exciting. To have another campus in the South.
Yep, to have a campus in the South.
Here's some stats and then some shows. They've got over 100 sound stages, 90 companies. Just recently, over the last few years, 100,000 workers in the industry have moved to Georgia. Currently, it's second to only LA, ahead of New York. A lot of people don't realize this, but in Queens and the boroughs and stuff, there's a fair amount of sound stages where a lot of shows. So just in the next few years, it'll surpass LA, which is absolutely insane. I think it's currently fifth in the world. Fifth in the world. Yep. And it came out of nowhere. And these are just some of the shows that shoot there. The Walking Dead, Stranger Things, The Vampire Diaries, some of the Hunger Games. You mentioned Lionsgate is about to invest about $200 million in sound stages there. And then, of course, there's Marvel.
Yeah, I think that if anybody watching this is like wanting to know where is a good investment, invest your money in Fayetteville because it's 25 minutes from the airport. Even if you don't buy in Trilith, because it's double what it is in the village. But I think that if you invest around there, it's absolutely, you will not lose your money.
And here's the thing. I think we're such sensitive creatures, artists, human beings. And I think the business can sometimes, LA, it certainly took a toll on me, can make you a little bit hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the harder we get, right? Because out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So think about this. We talked about financial sustainability, but let's talk about the creative impact of what we're discussing right here.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm an artist, a sensitive creature, and I'm now in a family-friendly, faith-friendly, if you're a believer, if I want to sustain my marriage, my relationship with my kids, want to walk my daughter to school, if I want to get enough sleep at night and actually have great mental health, physical health, imagine if I'm now living in a place that sustains all of that.
Mm-hmm.
What impact will that have on the art that I create, the stories that I tell, how I treat people on set?
Mm-hmm.
It makes you wonder. I mean, I remember working on ER, and there was this director, this really big guy, who yelled at the top of his lungs at everybody on set. I was like 23 years old. Okay. Now, I don't know why this guy was the way that he was, but I wonder sometimes if the industry, the unsustainability, the fact that we've accepted it breaking marriages, Teamsters who drive the trucks and do all that. Do you know that their life expectancy is mid-50s?
Good Lord.
A lot of those guys, when they would pick me up and I was shooting in New York when I was doing Lipstick Jungle, the Teamsters would pick me up and then drive me all the way out to Queens, I think was where the studio was. And I was living in Brooklyn at the time. It was not uncommon for that Teamster to tell me that he woke up at 3 a.m. and that he probably wouldn't get home till midnight.
That's insane. I mean, that's not sustainable.
No, this is why they...
My hope is that the influence and the migration from people from California do not affect the culture of Trilith. It's been basted in intercession and prayer, and I pray the culture doesn't happen. What happened to Hollywood doesn't happen to Trilith. And I don't think it will.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it will because it feels so amazing, but it's still in its infancy. But it's such a stunning place, man.
Wow. It's exciting, man. It's exciting. I mean, with the strike happening, with the Me Too, and I would call it like the women's justice movement, I've been feeling as of late that there is this earthquake that's taken place. Yeah. Sean Foyt also prophesied this just recently, that there's this earthquake. And just recently I had a spiritual experience, which at some point maybe we'll get to talk about in season 2, but the Lord physically shook me while in worship, and it felt like an earthquake. That's what he said to me, an earthquake is coming. And when that happened, and he shook me so violently for sort of kind of hours, for about half a day, I said to him, Lord, why an earthquake? Earthquakes sound so violent. They sound so unkind, not beneficial. But I knew that it was my Father who had shook me. So I said to him, so what is it that you do with an earthquake? And he says, I tear down any structures or systems that do not belong to me. And the only things that will be left standing are my things. And it makes me wonder, it begs the question, if all of these earthquakes, these birth pangs, if you will, like out of Revelation, right? Like if all of this is because God is shaking out and leveling out and breaking down structures and systems that don't belong to him.
Yeah. And creating new ones. Because when that lava spews out, like if you look at Hawaii, it creates new land and new territory.
Which is pretty violent.
And it's violent, but it's also majestic.
And it's good.
And I think that if people leave it too long, they'll miss out. And I've been saying this for years.
You feel a sense of urgency, don't you?
A massive sense of urgency. For us personally.
Yeah.
And for our students.
Yeah.
I think, if you're in LA, I would consider moving to Atlanta, and any new actor, any new artist starting out there, I would absolutely check Atlanta out.
So good, man. Thanks for going there and bringing back the fruit of this new wisdom, this new thing that's happening. It's been great hanging out with you, brother. This is the kickoff pilot episode of season 2.
Season 2, baby.
Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, give us that 5-star review. And if you have an artist in your life, young, old, middle-aged, like Fab, just let them know about Storia. Let them know about Bethel Conservatory of the Arts. If you're a filmmaker, screenwriter, dancer, music theater, actor, we've got programs in all of those disciplines. And Fab is one of those guys that really is a proponent He is our ambassador. He is our champion for our artists to get represented around the country. So if you're a parent and you're concerned about sending your son or daughter into the industry, we want to tell you that we think it's a new day. There's new possibilities.
And no double chin. No double chin and triceps.
Because you look fabulous.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see you again next episode.
See you soon.